Today, Great.com talks with Amy Nemeth, who is the Director of Advancement and Engagement at Restavek Freedom Foundation. And if you haven't heard of them, they are a non-profit on a mission to end child slavery in Haiti. If you are new here, please press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because today we learn why it is so important to end child slavery in Haiti. Hello, Amy, and welcome to our podcast.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And I really look forward to having this conversation, Amy, so you can educate us and teach us all about this, everything that's going on in Haiti, because it sounds awful from what I've had a little look at. So I would love to dive into that deeper and just find out a bit more and find out how us as the viewers and listeners can help. So, Amy, for me and anybody new here, what is Restavek Freedom and what do you do?
That's a great question. Restavek Freedom exists to end child slavery in Haiti. Restavek comes from the French word rester and avec, to stay with. And it's this deeply held cultural tradition in Haiti where destitute families who generally how it happens is these destitute families who can't afford to care for all their children send a child into a marginally less destitute family with the understanding that that child will be provided for and cared for and given an education. Pretty much all education in Haiti is private. And in exchange, the child will do a few light household chores. And unfortunately, what happens is that that's not what happens. The children generally end up in what the UN calls a form of modern day slavery. And they don't receive an education. They're cut off from their family. They suffer from tremendous physical, psychological, and sexual abuse. And it's pretty horrifying. And generally, the families that sent them never have any idea. So what we're doing is we're working to end that system. Estimates are between 1 in every 4 and 1 in every 12 children in Haiti are enslaved, which is a tremendous number. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we feel like we're making real significant progress.
Wow, that's I just can't believe that. In this day and age, it's just so hard to hear that child slavery is still happening, because obviously we are living this incredible privileged life, and I believe that a lot of the world is sort of blind to this, because before hearing about your organisation, I didn't realise that was going on, especially in Haiti as well. And it's so awful to hear that these children are just living these lives, and like you say, that they're brought in to do light household chores, and that isn't obviously the case. So the question, Amy, would be, why do you think slavery is still happening in this day and age now, today?
Well, that's a very complex, complicated question. I would say, first of all, Haiti is a very hard place to live. I grew up in the third world country and certainly have traveled around a lot, and I've never seen anything like Haiti. It's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and there's just no infrastructure. So electricity, there's no real solid power grid. There's no free education. There's no reliable running water. There's no trash pickup. There's no postal service. There's only one highway in the entire country. And so living in Haiti is very challenging. And people will tell you that you can't live in Haiti without help. You can't run a household without help. It's also, there's a long tradition of slavery. It was the first country in the world where people who were enslaved overthrew their captors and regained control of their country. So slavery has had a deeply held, habit in Haiti. So it's sort of their Restavek is sort of their dirty little secret. It's a pretty brutal place to live. Beautiful people. It's called the Pearl of the Antilles for a reason. I mean, it's beautiful, the beaches and the mountains, but it's a hard place to live.
Yeah, and again, thank you for sharing that with us, because again, for me, I've traveled to a few places around the world, and when I think Haiti, I just think, oh, beautiful beaches, palm trees, etc. But then obviously deep at the core of it, this stuff is going on. So it's very hard to hear that as well. And I'm sure for many of our viewers and listeners, it's also hard to hear that too. And so going on from that, so you guys have come in, and since your founding in 2007, what have been some of your biggest struggles dealing with this situation, and how have you overcome them?
That's a great question. I'd say one of the biggest challenges about working in Haiti is just natural disasters that we have no control over. Hurricanes and earthquakes. And, when you're talking about a country that's, already just struggling so much, you add these terrible disasters on top of it. And I mean, it's devastation on top of devastation. And we've really had to pivot hard in some of those circumstances. Besides just doing the work that we do with children, we've had to rebuild churches and the buildings that are necessary for communities to continue to exist and help families. A lot of children that are in Restavek because their parents died in some of these natural disasters. And so that certainly adds to the burden of a country that's already struggling. So that's been probably one of the biggest challenges that we've had. I mean, certainly some of the other things are just that people think Haiti is a lost cause, and that's heartbreaking. It's not. Haiti is full of hope and full of, intelligent, capable people who also want to see their country, emerge from the ashes of history. And so convincing people that change can happen and that we can be agents of change together has been a bit of a challenge as well.
And when you just said, Amy, there about all the natural disasters, it actually triggered in my mind. I remember it was a few years back, but I remember seeing it was on the news, and I'm sure it was Haiti. Was it a tsunami or something took it out? I'm sure I saw it on the news, and it was devastating. So another really, really sad thing, what you just said, as in these children have gone from, say, losing their home, potentially losing their parents and loved ones too, and then being put into Restavek, as in that situation where they don't really want to be. They're almost, like you say, being a slave, and it's so horrible to hear that, because these young children just need somewhere to go, somewhere to look after, or to be looked after, to then build their future. But now they're not. They're actually working for somebody against their human rights as well. So what sort of impact do you think this is having on Haiti as a country, the rest of it situation, as in these young children in this situation? And obviously, because I'm guessing they're not going to school as well at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a collective trauma in Haiti, and there's sort of generational trauma attached to it as well. We interviewed one woman recently. Her daughter was in Restavek because this woman herself was raised in Restavek. And when she was a child, the people that she lived with, we call those people host families. The host family that she was living with beat her so badly, they beat her head against a wall and caused blindness for her. So she was married and she had 5 children, and her husband died. And, with her blindness, she's not able to provide for her family. And so she sent her children away into Restavek because the thought was, at least they won't starve to death if they're with someone else. And so obviously it's very hard for a culture to get past, this sort of collective generational trauma. So that's, I think, the effect that it's having on Haiti. But again, there are very bright, wonderful people. All of our team in Haiti, all of our child advocates are all Haitians, and they are passionate about bringing an end to this system. And there's sort of this sense that not as long as I can do anything about it will this continue. So we believe there's reason for hope.
And just going a bit further into that, Amy, so how are you guys a part of the bigger solution there?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's my favorite question.
Yeah.
We are working in Haiti in, one-on-one, and then community by community, and then one nation at a time. So let me start at the very base level. We have a child advocacy program and a child sponsorship program. And if people are interested, they can sponsor a child who's in Restavek for $30 a month. And you can go to restavekfreedom.org to do that. And our child advocates, through a multitude of different ways, get to know children in Restavek and come alongside them and the host families that they live with. And we ensure that the children begin to have an education. There are actually laws on the book in Haiti that prevent this system from happening. There's just no enforcement of the laws. That also is beginning to change, and I'll get back to that in a second. But we ensure that the children go to school, and we work with their families to elevate the dignity of caring for a child that is not their own. And as we do that, we coach these families as to how they are to appropriately care for and treat the children that are in their home. We meet with the schools and the teachers and the principals where our kids go to school, and we train them about how to integrate these children into the classroom and into the greater community and amongst their peers. We do summer camps, and we have clubs for kids so that they are around, children who are in similar circumstances, and they can learn things like how to sit at a table and eat. Most of these children, before they come into our program, sleep and eat by themselves on the ground outside. They aren't even allowed a bed or to eat with the family that they live with. So we coach the families about integrating these children and treating them like one of their own children in the home. So that's how we work one-on-one with children and their families in schools. And then we work community by community. We have things called our justice curriculum, where churches right now, and we're expanding that into other organizations within the community, offer education and training to people who are interested about the laws regarding children in care. It is amazing to me that sometimes people, will sit in church on Sunday morning and hear about how to love and treat one another, but have a child in Restavek at home. And you'll see people who, once they become aware of the fact that this is actually immoral, they're heartbroken at their own participation in something that is immoral and cruel. So anyway, we offer these justice trainings, and then we have what's called child protection committees that are sort of born out of these trainings. So people who go through the training, as well as community leaders, get together and they keep an eye out for vulnerable children in the community and work with police and the social services arms of the police, child protective services arms of the police, to identify and care for vulnerable children. For example, recently, people become known in the community as members of these committees. Recently, a girl was raped by her father. And when this happened, she knew who the community or the child protection committee members were in her community. And so she ran to one of them and told them what happened. And they made sure that she had a safe place to live and went with her to report the crime to the police. And the police are identifying and prosecuting him. And that is highly unusual in Haiti. A lot of times these are considered family issues. And so the law doesn't get involved. So we're beginning to see a shift and a change in that behavior that's very reassuring, very hopeful. So that's how we work community by community.
I was going to say, wow. Wow, Amy. Yeah, go ahead.
We also work one nation. We're working one nation at a time. We are working with another group to produce, and we have been for several years, a radio drama called Zukutap. And what it does is dramatizes some of the situations regarding child protection and child care and issues of Restavek, sexual assault, and things like that. Not very many people have access to a television, but radio is very popular. And we have about 2 million listeners to Zukutap. So that's happening. And we're also running a social media campaign called Protege. P as in Paul, W-O-T as in Tom, E-J-E. And you can find that on social media. Just to start raising awareness and start the conversation about child protection and child care and issues of Restavek in Haiti, because it is this dirty little secret. And so getting people to talk about it is really the first step in that. And so that's how we're working one nation at a time. So one child, one community, and one nation at a time, we're working to end the system of Restavek in Haiti.
I really absolutely love that. And wow, just thank you so much for that super detailed reply to that question there. And it just sounds like you guys are doing absolutely incredible things. And you said about the radio station, 2 million listeners, you said, right?
Yep.
Wow, that's insane. That's incredible. And like you also just said, the more people that we can get speaking about things like this, the more it's going to raise the awareness. So I just want to say congratulations to everybody that is a part of this. And
thank you.
One more question as well would be, is there any sort of government over there that you're working with at all?
Yes, we work a lot with local governments, and we have found them very cooperative and very interested in also participating to end the system, as well as we've worked with the police and the Bureau for the Protection of Minors, BPM, and IBERS in Haiti. For example, BPM, you and I in our countries have systems and computer systems where people can identify and track children who are runaways and vulnerable and things like that. And Haiti just hasn't had that kind of infrastructure. So we've helped design and provide some of that for them. And so they have been very cooperative and very helpful. And we really feel like we're in this together with them. So yes, the government has been helpful and really on the community and police level. So we're very grateful for that.
And I'm sure you are, because I'm sure other organisations and non-profits that are there to help are almost getting sort of restricted by the government. So it's so nice to hear that you're working together to sort of combat this as well and to end this. That's really great to hear and very helpful for not only you, but for everyone that wants to be a part of this as well. So that just leads me on, Amy, to asking, what can somebody do to help, and what action steps can they take to be a part of the solution?
Great question. I would say that one of the easiest things to do is to follow us on social media and share our posts, because again, let's have the conversation. As you said at the beginning, you weren't even aware that this issue existed and that it was so prevalent in a country. So let's raise the value of the conversation and talk about it. So you can find us on Restavek Freedom on basically all forms of social media. The second is, if you have the ability and you want to be financially part of the solution, you certainly can make a donation online to us. Every single cent that is donated, Restavek Freedom goes to Haiti and goes to being part of the solution. All my salary and the salary of all of the people outside of Haiti is underwritten by a private donor, so you can rest assured about that. And we have perfect ratings by Charity Navigator and all those reviewers. So I would say that's probably the next thing. And again, $30 a month makes sure that one of these children has enough food to eat, has an education, is protected and cared for, and that is a very minor investment in the life of a child in Haiti, and it profoundly changes their lives.
Yeah, and that's so beautiful to hear that all of this all of the donations are going to these people in need, the children in need, and everybody deserves, in my eyes, just the standard of living that we all take for granted. And in this day and age, it's just almost unbelievable that it's still happening. So I'm just so grateful there is organisations like you guys out there, and I'm sure that all of our listeners are grateful as well, and the viewers as well. So I just want to say, Amy, thank you so much, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And just I really appreciate you for being here and educating us on what is actually going on, because I said at the start, I never knew anything about this. So it's just really nice for you to be here today and share your words of wisdom with everybody. And for you listening, if you've enjoyed the episode, please press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. That way it will show the algorithms that this is an important conversation so more people can learn why we need to combat child slavery in Haiti.